World of Warcraft recently announced that they're going to be adding a one-button rotation to the game, and it's caused quite a stir. Welcome everyone, my name is Edrem, animatronic puppet, VTuber, and content enjoyer, and the content that I'm normally enjoying is Final Fantasy XIV, not World of Warcraft, but this does kind of bleed over into Final Fantasy, and of course a lot of people have been talking about this in Final Fantasy as well now. For context, this is the WoWcast. It's a interview with one of the lead developers going over how World of Warcraft will be soon adding, for accessibility and ease of difficulty, a button in the game that automatically does a player's rotation. Now, there's a penalty to that, right? It's slower than actually doing it manually, but it's designed to try and help people get into the game. People who are not confident playing their job, or people who want to kind of just zone out maybe while they're doing some mindless grind in the game, and also people with accessibility and disabilities that may impede them from being able to fully do a rotation. Get to that bit in a sec. But this, of course, bring up Final Fantasy and like, should Final Fantasy have this? Does Final Fantasy have this? I've already seen some people say that with plugins, Final Fantasy already has this, but I don't think those people really have actually used the plugin. Yes, there is a combo plugin in Final Fantasy we don't really talk about, but it's not smart, right? So basically what it does is it condenses the buttons that have no decision making behind them. For example, with Warrior, I've got a 1, 2, 3 rotation, but sometimes I press 4 instead of 3. In fact, most of the time I'm pressing 4 instead of 3, right? I press 1, 2, 3 if I want my buff. I want 1, 2, 4 if I'm actually doing more damage and building up charge. So the combo plugin for 14 only does the 1, 2. It only condenses the buttons that is mindless. You'll always press this button after this button. That's all it does. That's why if you ever try it out with Monk, you realize that the entire thing does nothing. This is very different though. This is going to be a smart button in World of Warcraft that is automatically changing your rotation to the best thing that at least that the system thinks you should be doing at that time. Obviously that's not actually going to be the best because there's not always context aware situations. Like for example, if you need to move out of something very soon, it's not good to start casting something, you know, you want an instant spell instead, something like that. But it is an interesting addition they're adding. Now, they have also announced that they want to have rotation helpers in the game, things that highlight and kind of show more what your next button should be. This is mostly because there's already a plugin that does that is incredibly popular, so they're kind of just like, well, we'll put it in the main game. Not talking about that so much because that's a whole different thing. That's a whole different thing about, is World of Warcraft classes too complicated? Yes, a little bit, but we're just talking about the one button rotation, right? And I see two problems with this. Two problems. I like it in theory, but I see two problems. One, they've talked about how it makes your GCD slower, right? So if you do it, you have like an extra second in between casts. In theory, that's fine. However, I'm really worried that there's going to be some players out there that write some kind of add-on for WoW that can detect this, right? That can detect like, hey, this person in your group is doing abilities slower than normal constantly. They're probably using the add-on. And then people get blacklisted over that. Because, you know, WoW players are very big about kicking people and blacklisting people from groups if they're at all possibly terrible. And it is kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, if you use this, you are going to be doing less DPS than a player that does know the job, even basics, right? Because you are doing less attacks. So there is that problem where I feel like the community may turn against people using it. Yeah. The other problem, and it's not really a problem in this case, it's kind of just they've gone for the most powerful, I guess, option, is I kind of wish there was some granularity to it, right? It is like a, hey, you want to use this button? Cool, use it. You don't want to use this button? Cool, don't use it. Whereas in other games we've seen that add accessibility features, they're like, well, we'll have various levels of doing this. One game that comes to mind recently that I've been playing on stream, by the way, I stream on twitch.tv every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on Edrem. One thing that comes to mind is Final Fantasy 16. That has these helper items that were kind of designed to help people get into it and for accessibility reasons, and they give you different kinds of buffs. One of them will automatically use potions when you're low on health, so you don't have to remember to press that. It's like, that's a really minor thing, but for some people that'd be really helpful. One of them, like the one button rotation, it makes it so you just have to press the one button and the game will automatically use the next ability you've got queued up, right? It'll choose which ability you've got automatically, just like here. But then you've also got another one where it's every time an attack is coming close to you, time will start to slow down, right? So you get a lot more dodge room. And it's like, that's great because people might want to actually play around, you know, people might want to play, but maybe they struggle with the dodging. So this gives them a bit more time for that. And then there's another one on top of that that is just straight up every time you get, every time an enemy tries to attack you, you will just automatically dodge, right? There's different levels of control there depending on what you want out of it. I would like to see that added in here if they're really going the accessibility route, but I also don't quite know exactly how they would do that. I think having a separate button for AoE would be nice, because this one also seems to be smart enough to AoE mobs automatically. It is literally just a one button solves everything button. But something to give more control to players if they want that, because some people might be okay enough that it's not enjoyable to use the one button, but maybe they're not in a state where they can do a full rotation. So something in between would be nice. That's my only minor nitpicky complaint though. Like, that's a, hey, if they expand this on the future, that's it. The other one that I think we'll have to see how the community handles is the whole detecting people using this plugin. But yeah, overall, pretty good thing. Should it be added to Final Fantasy XIV? I don't really know. I don't know. I think 14 benefits already a lot from having a much more simplified job design, right? They put the difficulty in the fights, not the job, which gets people annoyed these days. But it's hard to kind of wonder what would be okay with this. I would say there's some button bloat that needs to be removed. That would help a lot. But then also, generally speaking, the combos in 14 are not that complicated enough that you can kind of get away with not pressing all your buttons. You know, an inexperienced player is not always going to press all their OG cities. They're not going to line up their 2 minutes. They're not going to do all these things. And that's kind of completely fine in the majority of content. And then once you get into the harder content, any kind of big punishment like this, like the +1 second GCD, is going to be a little bit too punishing to the point where you're kind of getting carried by the rest of the group or you're not clearing. So yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, you know, what's your guys' opinions? What would you be interested in? Would you be interested in having a one rotation button in Final Fantasy XIV? Leave a comment below. But anyway, that was a quick little update. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you later.